Hi, my name is Michael McKeeman. I'm here with Deena Kastor to watch her 2006 London Marathon performance where she set the American record. Um, I was Deena's training partner during this year, and also was, as you'll see, out there with her in the race. So, so here's Deena. Deena, here's the start.
Oh my God. And you know what I just noticed was that Sebastian Coe started the race, and he's the leader of the World Athletics Federation now, but he was also the person that put my medal around my neck in 2004 at the Olympics. So I don't remember him starting the race. I was that laser focused. There's Mike with your black cap out in front, leading the way already. I love it. And Mike, as we're watching this for the first time in years, you are back in Mammoth where we trained for this, which is so exciting. As you can tell, that the pine trees behind you. But this is an all women's start, with the exception of the pacemakers. All of them Kenyan except for Mike. He's the lone wolf out there in front. But as you can see, he's probably, what do you think, a pack of 100? A lot of them are British women.
Yeah.
Trying to get qualifying times or age group records. But I want to say it's kind of an anticlimactic start when you see that there's 30,000 people on the starting line, but only this small bit of them go off. I actually much prefer the mass starts when all 50,000 people go off together, because to me that's just like this buzz of energy. But you know, we had our minds focused on the task, and so there you are, Mike. Look at that with your red shoes. You're fast.
At this point, I think the only thing on my mind was the last thing that Terrence kept saying to us before the race. He just kept saying, first mile, better to be too slow than too fast. He was like, if you go out too fast, you're in trouble. He said, I will not be happy. Yeah. Too slow, too slow, too slow. And that was all I was thinking about. I was just so afraid that we were going to go out too hard.
And do you also remember the press conference with when we were discussing pacing and making sure we don't go out too fast or too slow? So Terrence is telling you that it better be too slow, but it was the race director, Dave Bedford at the time, who said that if it's too slow or too fast, he's going to throw you to the pigs.
Yes. He caused me a lot of stress that week, actually. I believe his actual words were, he said the halfway is supposed to be 109.45, not 109.40, not 109.50, 109.45. And I said, oh, cool. So there was a window of like plus 2 or 3 seconds. Perfect. It's great.
Yeah. And
no pressure.
And all for the very first marathon that you were actually going to complete. Like, that's
yes.
A lot of pressure to put on somebody in your first marathon. But I think his point was that he didn't want preferential treatment, that you were there to pace any woman to a sub 220, and that you weren't my personal pacer. You were a pacer for all women.
They had a lot of rules about that, and about not pacing anyone in particular, and there were all sorts of contingencies. Well, what if somebody goes faster than that pace? What are you supposed to do? What if at halfway somebody picks it up? What are you supposed to do? And there were all sorts of rules, but it essentially boiled down to, you're supposed to run this pace for halfway, and then after that you run with whoever's in the front for whatever they want to do. And it doesn't matter who it is or how fast they're running. But yeah, there was a lot of contingencies.
Yeah, and really the rest of us had the easy job of just hanging in and staying on pace. I think that's Selena Koskei, and that's Susan Shepkeme right there. And Susan, in the 2001 New York City Marathon, which was my very first marathon, she was second place there. Behind her, the two women in the red singlets, it's Constantina Dita, in the middle. So I'm just to the right of Constantina with the black hat on, but Constantina Dita went on in 2008 to win Olympic gold in Beijing. To the right of the screen in the red is Mara Yamauchi, who's a Beijing and London Olympian. So it's a pretty stacked field. I think it was only 2 weeks before the race that we heard that Paula Radcliffe dropped out. And I was really disappointed because training had gone so well. My buildup had gone so well. Mike and I stride for thousands of miles that season, and disappointed that she backed out of the race, because you always want to use the best to bring out the best in you. So I was hoping to have a matchup with Paula that day, but it wasn't in the cards. So we're getting a little bit of Susan Chepkemay there. Silver medal, the world half.
Is there anything in particular that you remember about the training heading into this race?
Ooh, I mean, one of the things that stuck out, and I actually put it in my book, because your sense of humor always carried me through the exhaustion of the miles, was when we were doing that Antelope Valley loop, and we were going up the hill, and you were complaining, and I told you to be positive, and you said, "Okay, I'm positive this sucks." You first said that, like, this hill sucks, and I'm like, "Be positive," and you're like, "Okay, I'm positive this sucks," and I was laughing so hard, but you were just like, just in your deadpan, just kept on keeping pace, and my legs like buckled in weakness from laughing so hard. This has to be maybe the third mile that's a little downhill. I think, didn't we run like a 5 flat mile or something?
Yeah, we ran very fast that one. I remember Terrence told us afterwards he was in the car with Andrew. I think they were driving from the start back to the finish, and I remember him saying how Andrew was in a panic because the first mile was around 5:30, the second mile was about the same. We were supposed to be running 5:20 pace, and he was wondering why we're running so slow and kind of being stressed out. And then this mile, yeah, we ran 5 flat, 5:0 something, and then he was panicked the other way. So fast, why are they going so fast? But yeah, there was a lot of downhill on this mile, and you kind of couldn't keep, there it is, 5:03. Yeah, you kind of couldn't help from running fast.
Yeah.
As we're watching, I just also happened to notice something interesting that I remember from this race. How they actually had that line painted on the road. There's a blue line, and that was the literal shortest point. It was, this is 26 miles, 385 yards. And I remember just staring at that line and thinking, I'm not running any farther than I have to, and trying to follow that route.
Absolutely, just ride it like a rail. I'm questioning my my white glove choice right now. That's interesting. I don't remember the white gloves, but this is Susan Chepkemay with the blue singlet and short hair, who won the Rotterdam Marathon in 2001, and Selena Koskai right behind us with the big bun in the yellow singlet. Went on to win Boston, I think in 2009, maybe. But that's the kind of company that we're in. And I just remember being so confident leading up to this race. We got another split there, as I'm watch obsessed during this race. But I just remember coming into this race so confident, where other races, when someone was with me, I felt anxious to shake them. And this race, I just felt like I knew I was gonna outlast them. So they never really, oh shoot, well, obviously, because she was right behind me. See her falling. This is like vintage coverage, right? I mean, it's a little,
it's
little grainy, not HD anymore, yeah.
No. Well, it's interesting what you mentioned about confidence, because it must have been contagious, because I was also confident in you. I wasn't confident in myself necessarily, but I also felt that you were in control, and that even though they were telling me I was supposed to run with whoever was in the lead and not necessarily with you, I always felt like it was going to be you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we ran with that confidence every day,
Well, this was a fun stretch of the course. Sorry, where we ran by the Cuddy Sark bar,
yeah.
and I think this is one of the few parts of the course that still has the cobblestones on it. And I remember coming through here, and I feel like there were already people out drinking and having fun, and they were extremely loud and helping to pull us along at this part of the
Yeah.
race.
Like they may have been there from the night before. They were just like
Right.
spillovers from the night before. But also you could tell people are in ponchos. It rained the entire time in this race. And I remember thinking that world records have been broken in the rain. So I actually tried to use it to our advantage, like knowing that there's more negative ions in the air to absorb, as opposed to thinking, oh shoot, it's raining, I hope it's not slippery, or like that wasn't in my mind. It was just absorbing the ideas that were in front of us, or the surroundings, as how it was going to benefit and not detour us. So that's like a confident mind, that like no negativity is going to penetrate on a day that you're feeling good.
I think also, I feel like I remember, and I think this speaks to your level of preparation and the level of preparation from your team, you know, from Terrence and from Andrew. I feel like we tested out a couple of different flats at various points, because certain shoes, if you wear them and it's wet, you slip. And I feel like I remember that we tested out some different shoes in order to make sure that if it rained, we weren't going to be slipping and have good traction.
Yeah, and this was the DS Racer that I was wearing, and they had like the bottom had like this like plastic nodules all over it, so it almost felt like little grips for the ground. I love that shoe. I also remember a little look over my shoulder. Maybe she was clipping my heels, and I was giving her a little watch it. I remember before we even began our buildup for this race, I wasn't sure if I wanted to run Boston or London. And it was just going in knowing that I was hitting the peak of my career. And it's so interesting to reflect back and see how I knew that. And even the confidence before we even got out and ran 1 mile to prepare for this, that it was, okay, do I want to win Boston, or do I want to lower the American record so that it's more out of reach? And that was it was fascinating that the decision was so hard, but I, in my mind, knew that I was either going to win Boston or I was going to run under 220. And it was just which one felt more important to me. And I could not make the decision. So do you remember, Mike, that I had our dog, my chocolate lab, make it, Aspen, who was getting old, but I put her moose stuffed animal and her bear stuffed animal out in the driveway, and the bear represented Boston and the moose represented London. And I opened the front door and told her to go get her baby, and she came back with the moose. So London it was. It just seemed so silly, because I just could not, for the life of me, I mulled it over for weeks and I couldn't decide which was more important.
I remember that we had a very long talk about the pros and cons of each race during a very long car ride from Mammoth to Woodside,
Yes.
because there was a lot of time to kill on that drive. So
It was a long, arduous drive. Do you want to share with everyone how beautifully you sing "Wanted, Dead or Alive" by Bon Jovi? How you sound exactly like him? Do you want to do that right now? Or it's not?
I don't know whether anybody wants to hear my rendition now, but yeah, I will say it has to be one long car ride to get me to sing in front of other people, because I am not a singer. But if it comes to "Wanted, Dead or Alive," I'm in.
You are definitely a singer. You proved it that day. So right here, we're going over the Tower Bridge, which is just a gorgeous bridge, but also right next to the hotel we stayed at a few days leading up to the race. And I remember so clearly thinking, oh my God, there's the hotel. I would do anything to go sit in that window and drink a cup of warm tea and take a hot shower.
That hotel is in such a precarious spot for people not having a good day, because not only do you pass it here around halfway, you actually, after doing a loop in this other part of town, you come back past it around, I don't know, what is it, mile 19 or 20, somewhere in that range. And I think there are a lot of people in the past who have taken that opportunity to do exactly what you're talking about, because it's very convenient. And if you keep running all the way to the finish, it's not convenient to get back to the hotel. You have to take a boat because all the roads are closed. So it's a lot easier just to stop and go up to your room.
Yeah, and it's in the same two places, halfway and mile 20, the same two places that you do the most self-reflection. Like, it's halfway, how do I feel? Is it gonna get, can I withstand it getting twice as hard as it is right now? And then that 20-mile mark where you know if it's gonna be a good or a bad day or not. And so, yeah, it is the hardest, but it was also in a part that, because look, Big Ben, Parliament, is that what you're doing?
No, I think I'm pointing out the water stop is coming up, I believe, or a split or something. The Big Ben and Parliament isn't until a little bit later.
Yeah, maybe.
There we go, water coming up.
Yeah, when we come back by the hotel around 20 is when you can look up the road and see it off in the distance to start reeling it in. So at the half we were 109.48.
Yep.
I think, and which was perfect, Mike. You were a perfect pacer, just as you had been every single day in training. I thought you were going to throw me under the bus a few minutes ago when you were talking about going to training camp in Woodside.
I'll go ahead. Well, I can absolutely throw you way under that bus. I wasn't sure how far under the bus I was okay to go with that one. Yeah, it's interesting how the training heading into this race went so well, but it went so well. There's a caveat to that. It went so well once we got back to Mammoth after our initial stint in Woodside, where we were planning on doing, I think our original plan was to stay there for 2 months to escape the snow here in Mammoth. And we made the long drive and we were there, and I don't know, was it maybe 2, maybe 3 weeks? I showed up for a long run one morning and everybody was there, but I didn't see Deena. And I said to Terrence, "Where's Deena?" And he said, "Deena's gone." And I said, "What do you mean Deena's gone?" And he said, "She went home." And I said, like, home, she showed up for the run, but decided she wasn't feeling well. She went back to where she was staying. And he said, no, home to Mammoth. He said, so she asked if you could just do your run this morning. And then they actually have another car here that they need you to drive back to Mammoth. And I said, oh, okay.
You're so amazing. You're so amazing that you put up with me.
Yes, you were missing your dog.
I didn't decide to go home. I basically got kicked out. I mean, in reality, I got kicked out of training camp. Like, you're miserable. But the reason why I was miserable, and maybe it prepared me for this moment in London, because it rained every single day in Woodside. We couldn't get on the trails, like Palo Alto area, Stanford territory. It rained every day. And one morning I went to grab my English muffins and noticed that something nibbled at it. Something tore open the bag and nibbled at the top of my English muffins I had gotten at the bakery. And I was like, ew, gross. And so I just threw the whole thing away. That night I went to get into bed and there was rat poop on my bed, which is utterly disgusting. And then we started to look for, like, in a closet for, like, cleaning supplies or something, and there was a rat trap that was as big as my desk. So I knew this thing was big and ugly. And you saw it, didn't you see it?
I did not. I was actually staying somewhere else. I was staying in that house with like 8 other people.
Yeah,
so
but up on the hill, the house on the hill. But I thought you guys were like watching a movie in the living room. And maybe Kate O'Neill was there too. And the rat, they were eating dinner on the floor and the rat just like walked out right in front of them.
Oh,
so
yeah, that's not good. Yeah, that's enough to leave.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I missed my dog, of course. You mentioned yes. That. So I just looked over my shoulder to see where the other women were. And so we're far along, because I think I dropped Selena in the Isle of the Dogs, that section before we come back to before we come back toward the Tower Hotel and Tower Bridge. And then Susan Chepkame, I think we dropped at like mile 20 something. So this, is this, what the heck is this? Henry Rudo, is that this guy? Was that this other name, Henry?
Yes. Yeah, I can't remember. I think his name was Henry, but I don't think that, I forget what his last name is. We should have looked it up.
I know, I think it was Henry Rudo. But I remember from 2003 running the London Marathon, I was third place there behind Paula Radcliffe and Catherine Deriba of Kenya. And the two male escorts, as they were called, weren't you guys not even called pacers? You were called escorts.
That's correct. Yes.
Women can't take care of themselves. We need men to lead the way. But I remember that the guy that was running with me had no watch on. And then when we got into like mile 24, he was throwing up like green bile. He was just puking it. And some of it landed on my shoe. So that last water bottle, I took one sip of it and gave it to him. And he took a few sips and then he ended up dropping out. But we were already at 24 miles, but he was suffering so bad.
Oh, wow. Yes, escorts was definitely the term. I believe at one point somebody also threw out the bodyguard term. And at this point, that was my only concern with how you were going to finish this race, because this was only 2 years after the Athens Olympics where that man ran out onto the course. And they were concerned about the possibility of something like that happening. And I remember they said, if anyone comes out on the course toward any of the women, you have to intercept them. And I said, wait, I have to do what?
Yeah. Could I get training for that first?
Yeah. Yeah. Fortunately, nothing like that happened.
In Athens, wasn't it like a defrocked priest? I don't even know what that means. I should have looked it up before I even said it, because maybe that's not politically correct. But I think he actually lived in the UK, and so I from what I understand, that he was not going to leave his house that day because there was patrol. There was some UK patrol outside of his home so that he wouldn't leave and disrupt the event, which I think is just crazy, the precautions. It's not just roping off a course and letting people run it. In 2001 at the New York City Marathon, my very first marathon, it was right after September 11th, and they had Navy SEALs protecting the pillars underneath the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, because that would have been a pretty good target to get 35,000 people on a bridge. And so, oh, see, you're pointing again, Mike. Big Ben, is that what you're saying? That might have been a Big Ben comment. Big Ben in the Parliament, because unless I have a water station, you're amazing. It's the water station again. You pointed it out. So I didn't have to keep my eyes on the Elite Fluids Ahead sign. And I think if this is the second to last water bottle, this is the one when I do, oh, it's 30, yeah. So 30K, I actually, instead of having a carbohydrate drink like Gatorade or Cytomax, I think is what I was drinking in this race, Peachy Keen Cytomax, which they don't even make anymore. There's Susan Chepkame in second. That at 30K, I put in 2 Jet Blackberry Goos into water and shake it up. And that to me just gives me, it has a little bit of caffeine in it. So love the caffeine, that little boost I can get at that moment. And then being able to carry it for the next 12 kilometers that we have left. And so as Mike's iPad overheated, and this isn't even a 2 hour, 20-minute race. It's only a 37-minute marathon, but I trusted Mike in his pacing, which is why I'm tucked in behind him. And the race, my marathon before this was, and Mike's falling off a little bit, which might be around the 21-mile mark. But the race that I ran before this was the very first race very first marathon I won. I had the American record and an Olympic medal, but I hadn't, see, Mike wasn't there to point out my water bottle, so I missed it. Almost missed it. And also here, the British commentators, I remember right after the race, seeing some of the commentary that night, and Tim Hutchins, who's still commentating races all over the world on the track and on the roads, said, I was talking to Deena in the elite hospitality room the other day, and I asked her what her favorite meal was. And it happened to be the last meal that I made in our little training camp. We were actually living in London for 3 weeks prior to adapt. We ran the Berlin Half Marathon, where I broke 4 American records that day, and then stayed over in Europe and just outside of the city. And so the last meal I made was steak with a little bit of gorgonzola cheese sauce on the side, which is a family favorite. And he said, God, Americans put cheese on everything. And I thought, oh gosh, do we actually put cheese on everything? Well, maybe we do. It's something to ponder anyway. Mike, I was just talking about the Americans putting cheese on everything, because you missed just now is when I was just a couple strides ahead of you and I ran into the table because I almost missed my water bottle. Oh, Mike, we can't hear you. Sorry.
All right, here I am.
Yes, I hear you now.
Okay. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. If you actually hear the commentary there, one of the commentaries commentators wonders out loud why I didn't alert you that the water stop was coming up. And yeah, the answer is pretty simple. I am dying. I am just suffering. I'm putting one foot in front of the other, just hoping I finish. I wasn't really able to be alert and to be calling out instructions.
Yeah, I mean, this is really, you're right there. You're right. You're just a few strides behind, but this is where the marathon starts to hurt a lot. You could see the crowds, even though it's raining out, still really amazing. But the reason I was getting ready to talk about how the marathon previously was Chicago. And although it was my first marathon win, I ran very, kind of like bullyish, like just, all the it was a big pack of people, and instead of tucking in behind, I was like pushing my way to the front. And so this was my lesson from that race, was to just stick behind you guys and let you do more of the mindful work, and just kind of get into a Zen trance so that I can do the distance. Like I knew I could run the pace. I just needed to do it with a calmer, more confident mind.
Yeah, that's one of the things that Terrence would always preach. He used the phrase emotional control is what he was always say, that you can't just constantly be pushing and fighting. And I mean, if the race is 2 hours and 20 minutes long, it's too much time to be fully engaged, like all out that whole way. You have to kind of hold it back a little bit until the right time.
Absolutely. So we only have a couple miles left, Mike. You're running your first full marathon, and I know that we're all kind of hurting right now, but we're still engaged. And physiologically, Terrence had said this, Coach Vigil had said this, Andrew, my current coach, says this, that the most efficient way to run is an even pace. And so I'll first tell you that our first half was 109.48. And when the race is over, you'll see what our second half is.
Yes. Yeah, very consistent. I remember also looking at each of the 5K splits within the race, and it was all pretty even as well. I think the three of us all did a good job of kind of sticking together and trying to manage things, even though every mile wasn't exactly the same, but just to break it up into chunks and know to be consistent over that amount of time.
Yeah, we look at 5K, it's more consistent, and then both halves, exactly consistent. And I just saw a grimace on my face here. So I'm definitely, I think we're equally hurting. You're just a couple behind me.
At this point in the race, you know, so you've got about 3 minutes left. I mean, what's going through your mind at this point? Are you excited yet, or are you still just thinking you want to get every last second out of this? Are you thinking, I hope I make it? What's going on?
I'm wondering where you are to do the math for me, because I was doing gymnastics. I'm going to start looking at my watch every few strides and trying to calculate. And in the time that I'm not looking at my watch, I'm trying to calculate the number I just saw. And am I going to make this? I don't know. And in one calculation, I just barely break 220. The other calculation, I'm off. So I'm like, Mike, math.
Yeah, I always enjoyed how much you would look at your watch, even though it wasn't really helping you, because you would look at your watch and then you would look at the numbers, and then it wasn't necessarily it wasn't serving a purpose. So
Right.
it was always entertaining. There's another look.
I know. Why have a watch if the numbers don't mean anything to you? The only number that meant anything was the one at the finish line, which we're getting to very quickly. And I remember this feeling like an absolute sprint. Looked at my watch again. There we go. Here's the final turn, right in front of Buckingham Palace. And now I can see the finish line. Oh, is that not the final turn? Now I'm going to Victoria's statue. I have one more right turn. Buckingham Palace is right behind, directly behind.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I know in my mind, even when I'm that close, I never feel like super confident or super great. You're always thinking, I hope I make the time. I hope I do this. It's
yeah, I mean, really in the final, you're just so engaged in finishing the best you can, which really every step matters. So here's the final turn to the finish line. Okay, I remembered it being an all-out sprint, and I look like I'm trying.
your arms are moving. That's some good arm action.
Yeah, that's oh yeah, but hurting big time. Yeah, and you're probably making the turn right about now. But this is really a grand finish line, just lined with British flags, the gilded statue of Queen Victoria, Buckingham Palace. It really is a stunning finishing stretch. So 109.48 first half, 109.48 second half. Exact splits, even though obviously the terrain undulates a little bit.
I'm trying to figure out now how you looked like you didn't even run a race. You look like you could keep going.
No way.
I'm pretty sure I look worse when I finish.
No way. I think that was Lyudmila Petrova from London. I mean, from Russia. Lyudmila Petrova, Susan Chepkamai, Bernahan Adair. Wow. And then Mike ends up finishing in 2:20. What was your seconds? 2:20?
2:20.26 maybe. I think it was something like that.
So that was so exciting to just stand there and wait for you to see you make that turn and come in. And I remember saying to you, you did it, you qualified for the Olympic trials. And you said, why? Why would I want to run this event ever again, or this distance ever again? It was just like you, just always funny, just like that deadpan humor. And so that was like the best memory. Besides all the Sudokus we did in training camp, and how diabolical was not even a challenge for you, was like the standouts, was you saying, why would I want to do this again?
Yeah, sometimes the thoughts we have in the final moments of a marathon or right after it's finished, you've got to be very careful with ever committing to anything, because it's easy to think, I think every marathon I've ever run, I've had points when I've said, well, I'm never doing this again.
Totally. It's similar to those sound bites that you get when you come out of anesthesia. You always say something goofy, goofy and strange, but definitely quotable. That's great. We did it, Mike. We did it. All those miles, getting sent home from training camp and kicked out of training camp and finally training clicking to making it to the finish line, both of us in record time.
And in between, we had a pit stop in Berlin for a half marathon as well. So yeah, we didn't mention you also set an American record this spring in the half marathon.
Yeah. So we were on a roll. We were on a roll together. Thank you for all the miles you've put in to help.
Well, I think I was a very, very, very tiny piece of this. This is
A big piece.